Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius podcast. My guest is Brad Weisman. He's an agent at Keller Williams Platinum Realty. So we're going to talk about current real estate trends, what's happening with the market, and what's happening to the poor American dream that seems to be degrading pretty fast. So welcome, Brad. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your history. Like, how did you get into real estate and why? And then we'll go from there.
Actually, I got into it kind of by accident. I got into it. I was a musician from the time I was 7 years old, and singing when I was 13. Wrote a lot of music. I ended up being on Star Search, which was a show, was kind of like American Idol back in the 90s or late 80s. I was on that in 1990, and I did a lot of writing and things like that. And I was living with my parents, and I had turned like 21, and my dad's like, you should find something to fall back on, just in case this music thing doesn't work out for you. And I said, okay, I'm game. I was doing odds and end jobs. I was doing like working at Orange Julius, and if anybody remembers Chess King, I'm dating myself. But I've worked at different retail places, nothing career oriented. And I decided, he said, well, what do you think I should do? And he said, I think you should be in sales. So right away I went to like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Do cars. I could sell cars. I love cars. I'm into that. And he's like, and I said, well, what were you thinking sales wise? And he said, real estate. Now, at the time, I was 21 years old with a ponytail down the center of my back. And I said to my dad, I said, you look at me. I got really long hair. I wear earrings and all this stuff. I said, I don't know if I'm really cut out for, real estate sales or real estate agent. He goes, I think you'll be fine. He goes, your whole life, every time you wanted a toy or you wanted anything, you were so good at selling me on it that we ended up buying it for you. He said, so I think you can use that talent with sales. Not knowing that later on in life, it's more about relationships in sales than it is about, convincing somebody or trying to talk somebody into buying something. It's more about relationships and finding out what's important for them and in their lives. So that's how it started. So at 22, I got my license. I'm now in it. I'm 53, so I'm in it 32 years or whatever it is, or 31 years. And yeah, I love it. And it became very addictive for me. I didn't think I'd ever find a passion for anything else but music. And it was almost weird too, where I felt like I was cheating on my music, because I always thought that music was my one and only love. And then all of a sudden I started realizing that I have a passion for people. I have a passion for success. I have a passion for a lot of other things besides writing music and singing. So it was kind of cool.
So what is it about real estate that you fell in love with? What do you love about it? Investing, advising, just looking at houses themselves? Like, what is it that excites you about it?
Well, in the beginning, it was, I'm going to be completely honest, we got to be honest with yourself. And in the beginning, it was money. I mean, the commission was great. It was the only, and that was what was different between music and this, is that, when I would write a song and take it up to New York to try and get, somebody to sign the song on or do something, you would go into a room and you spent months on this song. And it was like, they would just tell you, nah, this isn't good. And then that was it. Now that was like your baby, that somebody just said your baby was ugly. So it wasn't cool. So when I got into real estate, I was lucky enough in the first 2 months, which was, for my age, I sold like 2 homes. I sold like 2 or 3 homes. And I'm looking at these checks going, this is really cool. I put in work, and the work that I put in and the time that I put in is actually paying off. So that was what did it. Now, and then as you go through your career, as you learn and you do things and you grow with your career, I think now it's everything. It's the money. It's what it's provided me in my life. And it allows me to do this podcast that I have. It allows me a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do if I didn't have this career. And also, it's never the same thing twice. I mean, I love being around people. And the reality is this, real estate is, probably it's the biggest investment for most people in their lives. So it's a big deal. And beyond that, it's where memories are made. It's where children come home from the hospital. It's where puppies come into your lives. It's everything. And it's a safe haven. It's a place that no matter what goes on in the world, I'm helping to have them find something that is home, which is everything.
So have you invested throughout these years, or have you just been,
absolutely.
saving your commissions and buying stocks, or you own properties yourself?
Absolutely own properties myself. I've gone back and forth with owning properties. I own some now. I own a commercial building that our office is in with my partners. Just bought a place at the beach, have my own house that I've been in for 20 some years. I owned a lot of real estate in our local city here for a while. And then when the market took a big dump back in, I don't know if you remember, in 2007, there was a huge real estate crash. So I started liquidating before it really crashed.
I remember.
You remember? Yeah, it was very character building.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not fun. And you learn from that. And like I said, I got rid of a lot of real estate because what ended up happening also is, when everything in your life is real estate and that's where all of your income comes from and that's where all of your investments are, you all of a sudden when the market crashes like it did in 2008, that everything I was involved in revolved around real estate. And that was a little bit of, that hurt, it definitely was a tough time for a lot of agents. A lot of agents actually lost their homes back then. A lot of agents actually got out of the business back then. It was tough. It was not easy.
What do you hear today that after 30 plus years in real estate, you just want to poke your eyes out, because you're tired of hearing it? It's a misconception or commonly held belief that's just not true, that you have to disabuse over and over. Anything like that?
Yeah, right now there's a lot of people, and sometimes it's government, sometimes it's not, it's the media or whatever. The media tends to obviously always blow things out of proportion. But, right now, our main issue in real estate right now is actually inventory. A lot of people say it's affordability. Believe it or not, it's not as much affordability as it is inventory. Now, the affordability can be solved if you bring more inventory into the marketplace. It's supply and demand. This is like the best example of supply and demand. What some of the politicians are saying, they need to make housing more affordable. But when you create programs that brings more buyers into the market, it actually does the opposite effect. What it does is it raises the prices even more because you're not solving the problem. The problem is inventory, which means we need to build more homes. We need to build more apartment places. We need to build more condos. That's the issue. And the reason we got into this problem is from 2007, 2008. A lot of builders went out of business. We got way behind on inventory because nobody wanted to buy land or invest in developing a property because nobody had the money and the banks weren't loaning the money. So we're about 7 to 8 million properties shy of where we should be in the whole United States. That's a big
heard that, the first time home, your standard, let's say 1,500 square foot house, with permits and zoning and building costs and insurance and all that, it's not really viable for builders to build those kinds of homes, is what I heard.
It's not. The numbers aren't there. The margins aren't there. You're exactly correct. Yeah.
So are governments aware of this? They just don't care.
Well, yeah, and here
moving forward, or what?
Let's back up a little bit. This part of the problem, part of the issue of why those things are so expensive to build and to permit and to get land and put houses on them is our government, both local, state, and federal, has not been nice to development. We have a lot of EPA regulations. We have, the environmental stuff. We have a lot of red tape. And here's let me just give you, for instance, in our area here in Berks County in Pennsylvania, if I buy a piece of land, let's say it's a 40-acre piece of land, and I want to build, 20, 30, 40 homes on it, whatever it is. From the time I purchase that property till the time somebody's moving into the first home could be 4 years. So I don't know about
4
you.
years? 4 years?
Yeah. I don't know about you.
Are you supposed to float? I mean, are builders' loans and construction loans even amortized for that?
Attorney's fees, permits, buying the land, doing all the...
Even the loans, though. Can you get a loan that
absolutely
construction loan that'll go on that time?
Yeah, and that's what happened. So ours is probably one of the worst in the state here. Other counties in our state, are maybe 2 years. If you go down to Delaware, like the state, Delaware or Maryland, they're around 18 months, which is very doable and very reasonable. And that's the way it used to be everywhere. But there's so much red tape now. It takes so long to get the permits, all the approvals that you need to get between locals and state. Most of the time it's local and state, not really federal. All the approvals you have to get, you just can't imagine. It just it takes, it could be 2, 3, 4 years.
You know what's sad? And I've seen this directly firsthand. You could have a house where there's literally rotting corpses like hanging in the front yard.
Yep.
But if you want to change up and improve the house next door, you need permits and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But meanwhile, you literally could have utter garbage next door, and it's like, oh, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
And it's so true. I mean, what happens is they go after the people that they know will pay and will follow the rules. And that's what tends to happen. And I don't want to make blanket statements. It's not everywhere. It's not every person. It's not every government. It's not every township. But we do have to have some serious conversations with our local officials, our state officials. And that's happening now. You asked what's going on. Well, our local Chamber of Commerce has gotten involved. The our local, or I should say our state, our PAR, which is the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, has really gotten involved on a state level with talking to the politicians, the state reps in the state Senate and the governor, saying, what can we do? How can we loosen up some of this stuff temporarily in order to get some homes, you get some properties built? And a lot of it might be repurposing too. It could be taking, we're going to have we're noticing that commercial properties, obviously since COVID, are not leasing as much, and industrial's not leasing as much. Warehouse is doing very well because of Amazon and all the big guys. But we're noticing a lot of commercial spaces sitting vacant. What about repurposing that? Rezoning those areas to residential. Put condos in there. Put, whatever you need to do. Even apartments. We just need places for people to live, because that is going to be what solves the issue of unaffordable housing. If you make it more affordable by the government giving you the money or falsely lowering the interest rate, you're going to actually not achieve the goal. You're going to actually bring more people into the market, and you're going to raise the prices because now you have more buyers that can afford to buy the property. That's what people don't see that. And that's really what.
So lowering interest rates at this point, all it would do is actually squeeze inventory even more.
Oh, absolutely. If we talk about this as a realtor, actually, I talk about on my podcast. On my podcast, I have a guy named Pete Heim comes in. He's an agent in our office here. He's a good friend. So once a month, we do a real digging in deep, kind of like what we're doing right now. And we talk about, actually, if the rates right now would go to 4%, let's just say they went to 5%, you would see prices of real estate go through the roof. I'm telling you, you wouldn't even believe it. Because right now, we have a lot of buyers on the sidelines, a lot of buyers that are waiting for that rate to come back down, because now they can't afford maybe the houses, because when the rate goes up, that changes your qualification. So all of a sudden the rate comes down by 2%. You can't imagine what that would do.
Well, we didn't cover this, but why is there an inventory squeeze in your observation?
Because of, once again, back to 2007, 2008, it killed a lot of builders. Like locally here, we had 3 builders that pretty much went out of business. Developers.
But there's the builders that, right, there's no margin in it, so they're not building enough for housing. But what about, there's another story too. A lot of people have, let's say, 3%, 4% rates. So maybe they
that's definitely hurting you too.
To sell. Maybe they can't afford to lose their mortgage.
You are right. That's probably, I'm saying that is adding to the problem also. Okay, so yes, if the rates went down to 5, would some people still move? Would some people sell now? Yeah, maybe they would. But you got to remember, most of those people that aren't moving or downsizing or moving to Florida or moving somewhere up that they want to be, maybe they're retired or whatever, they're not moving, because if they go from a 3% rate, those are the ones that are stuck. They're at a 3% rate. They go to move to a house that's less money. Right? They grab the money, they less money, but they still need to have a mortgage. They're buying a house at 7.25%. Their mortgage could possibly be higher on a smaller home than it is the one they're living in, because of the interest rate difference. So that's one of the issues definitely, is that we have a lot of people sitting with a 3% interest rate, 3.5%. I know mine's 3.25. If I went to buy right now, I'd be at 7.25. That's 4 percentage points. That's a lot. That really makes a difference in the monthly payment. 1%, not a big deal. 1.5%, not a big deal. When you start talking 4%, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, is it about what, like $300 or $400 per 100,000?
It's about right. That's about right. Yep.
Have you seen a lot of people? If I'm seeing this, I'm in Texas. I'm seeing insurance going up like crazy.
Yeah,
which
makes
affordability even worse. Florida, I've heard, is much worse. Also, too, property values went up. Everyone celebrated, but then you get the tax bill. The state's like, let's raise the tax bill. So all that's put pressure on things too. It's gone up quite a bit. Like my insurance is more than doubled, and like I said, taxes have gone up. So how do you feel like that's contributing to the current market conditions?
It is, it is contributing to it. Absolutely. I mean, taxes are definitely going to go up. Taxes never go down. We all know that. They keep going up and the values go up. We're in an area here where we don't reassess when we sell the property, and it doesn't reassess every year. So our assessments here for tax purposes do not adjust. So if your house went up $200,000, you're still paying the same taxes as what it was before it went up $200,000. But I know in Florida, they reassess every year. I know Ocean City, Maryland, where we have our condo, they reassess every like 2 or 3 years. They have a computer program or whatever it is. And obviously as the values go up, you're paying more taxes, and that makes your monthly payment go up, of course. Insurance absolutely has been going up a lot. And not only is it going up, people are getting dropped. Like from small claims, or just that or they look at you as a risk, or they look at your home as a risk and they drop you. I mean, that whole industry is changing big time.
Oh, what do you see as it changing too?
As far as pricing, it's up 25%, 20%.
Yeah,
for insurance.
So I'm also seeing too, there's more tricks you got to watch out. So for instance, like a property I had, the roof is 10 years old, and we had to get a new roof. Yep. And luckily, I had a rider in the insurance policy I didn't even know. Now I know to ask for it to make sure you get the actual replacement value, because they wanted to give me the depreciated value. And I said, I haven't used it for 10 years. We don't care. It's 10 years old. Someone got the use out of it. We ain't paying.
Wow.
Yeah. So, or another one I've heard too is code has changed. So if you don't have a rider in your insurance policy to make sure that the replacement includes whatever is necessary to bring it up to code, the code new requirements may cost more than the old ones. Yeah, the insurance will not pay for that unless you have that rider in your policy as well.
Yeah, like electric service and stuff like that. If it's like 100 amp and now code is saying you have to have 200 amp and it goes, you're going to pay the difference between replacing the 100 amp to the 200 amp.
Yeah, I call my insurance agent periodically to ask him stuff, because he never tells me, but he's like an oracle. If I ask him the right question, he'll spit out an answer, and I go, oh, okay. Maybe that's important, by the way. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with the audience.
It's a good point.
I've learned.
It's a good point to read up. Most of us do not read our insurance policies, and I'm guilty of it a lot of times too. We really should. I was the same kind of situation. We finished our basement several years ago, and it was we put a bar down there, a bedroom, and a full bath, and all this stuff. And I didn't think anything of it. We did it, and it was great. And then I was talking. Thank God, my insurance guy is also a friend that I see out sometimes and have a beer together. And I just started talking about it. I said, hey, what because of what we did with our house, what do you think about? Is there anything we need to do? He goes, you did all that, and you didn't say anything to me. I'm like, yeah. Turns out none of that would have been covered. If we would have had a water backup or sewer backup or water coming down through from the first floor, none of that was on in my policy. I had no basement, finished basement type insurance on the property. I had no sewage backup insurance on the property, because back when I didn't have it finished, I didn't care if, obviously you care if your sewer backs up, but if there's nothing down there, you clean it up and that's it. It's concrete, but when you have a finished, that where you spent, a lot of money. So it is, you're right. We don't, a lot of times we're not really thinking about those things, and it's important to look at your policy, or when you make changes, call your agent, say, hey, am I covered on this? Is this something I need to be concerned about?
Yeah, a lot of nuances.
Yeah.
So what do you see happening for the rest of 2024? We're like mid 2024 here, just about. What do you see as ahead the next 6 months? I'm not going to ask you for years, because it's like probably impossible. But what do you see as happening?
Well, okay, so trending wise, and this is obviously every market's local. We could be doing booming in this county, and the next county over could be not doing as well. But as a whole throughout the nation, I really think we're going to still. Here's my 5-year prediction. I mean, I look 5 years out. If you are looking to buy a property, and you're not buying a property because you're waiting for the prices to come down, that is not a good choice. Not a good choice. Okay. I can tell you right now, inventory is not going to be solved overnight. This is going to take a while to get to the point where we have enough homes for the amount of people, unless we stop having babies or unless we stop having people come into our country. And no matter how you feel about people coming into the country, if there's 8 million people that came over the border, they got to live somewhere at some point. You know, they're going to have to live somewhere. There's got to be housing. So if we have that going on and we have, you know, everybody having babies and the population's growing, we're going to have an inventory issue for a very long time. The American dream is becoming the American privilege. It is changing, you know, and I hate to see that because, you know, purchasing your first home is one of the most exciting and rewarding things you can do. So over the next 5 years, I think we're going to see increases in real estate. You're still going to see it. It's going to be I think you're going to see 5 to 6%, maybe even 7% increases. And pockets throughout the nation are going to be higher than that, maybe 10%. Now, obviously, you're going to have some places that are going to be 2%, whatever. But overall, if you're waiting for prices to come down, I strongly suggest you don't do that, okay? This year, the rest of this year, I think interest rates are going to stay about where they are, okay? Maybe it'll come down into the sixes, something like that. That's about what I think is going to happen. And that's only because we still have some inflation issues. We still have, and that kind of, you know, if you look at what the Fed's doing. Now, the Fed rate does not directly go along with the interest rates for mortgage. It's a different thing that they look at, but it does affect the overall economy, and therefore that makes our rates, you know, stay higher. Hope that helps you or not. That answer your question.
No, it's okay. Well, what's it been like for you? You've been doing this for 32 years. What are some things that when you first started, you just couldn't imagine they are the way they are now? Like price, maybe other factors. Like what, you know, again, when you look back, you're like, I can't believe this is where we're at. I never would have thought this would have happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, what is happening now is just phenomenal. It's amazing, and like I just never saw this happening. Just like I didn't see the crash happening in 2007, 2008. I never saw the market going in this direction. I mean, for most of my career, when you would go get a listing contract to sell a house, we would get a 1-year contract because most of the time we would hope it would sell in 3 to 6 months, but if it didn't, we would want a whole year contract to recoup the money and the time that we put in if it sold in 8 months. So it's just very interesting where this has gone. Now we look at a market where I tell people, look, if we don't get a bunch of showings and it doesn't get an offer in, you know, 3 weeks, then we know the price is too high. So it's definitely different. It's really, really crazy where it's going. It's just, for instance, I put an offer on a house yesterday. And the offer, it's a house that was $265. It's, you know, smaller home around here. It's $265. It seemed a little underpriced, you know, maybe. And I had a customer that wrote up the agreement. So I found out that on that house, they got 60 showings. Okay. We put an offer in at $275. Okay. I asked the agent, where do we stand? Like, what do you think with this? And she said, well, we have offers now cash for $310. Now, the listing price is $265. We put in at $275, and they had cash offers at $310. You know, it's just crazy. That's what's going on. And the thing is
seems
when,
like from what you're saying, people are less patient. They want, you know, it makes sense. Everything is like that now. Everyone wants immediate results. People are less patient. People have shorter attention spans, and it seems to be reflective in the buying and bidding behavior of houses, is what I'm hearing. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're exactly right. And people, it's like a frenzy when a house like that comes on the market that's in half decent condition and that price rate under $300,000. It's a frenzy. People just go nuts. Here's the other thing too, is that remember on that situation, there's 50 some other people that still are looking for a home. Like there was 50 some showings, up to 60 showings on the house. That means in that market right there, there's still 60 people looking for a home. So when the next one comes out that's like that, it's got to be another frenzy again. I say it's like throwing a French fry at the beach and all the seagulls just go after it. That's kind of how I feel when a house goes on the market. You know what I mean? I mean, you have beaches down there in Texas, you know, don't you? Somewhere.
I'm from New York. I picture the seagulls doing exactly that.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yes, and that's really what it's like. A new listing is like a French fry with a bunch of seagulls around it. That's kind of what happens.
That's funny.
Yeah. Huh. What part of New York?
Oh, Long Island.
Oh, it's my wife is from Long Island.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for real estate in New York, forget it, please.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I left like 15 years ago. Property taxes back then were like 17 to 20,000 for a regular house. I can't even imagine now. It's just, it must be absurd. I have no idea.
Yeah, it is absurd. My in-laws live up there and live in a nice area, and it's great. And once you get there, it's great. It's the traffic getting to there is really crazy. But yeah, the prices are it's unbelievable. The prices and the taxes and everything up there, so it's amazing.
So just, last couple of questions. We were talking about, the shortage. So one thing I've seen is like here in Texas and Austin, they recently lowered the minimum lot size requirement to allow for increasing density. Some places are allowing ADUs, these accessory dwelling units. And from what I've heard, they're a lot cheaper to do because you don't have to bring in as much plumbing, bring in as much electric and all that off the street, which is crazy expensive with permit times. What are you seeing as some of the solutions that are out there already that hopefully will contribute to increasing inventory and, letting more people find homes?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, actually, and that's one of the ideas on the table. You got to change some of the regulations in some of the more rural areas where they have like 1 acre minimums. It's just crazy. So that does have to change in some areas, and it doesn't have to change everywhere. But it'd be nice to, And what's funny about that too is when there was developments out in the rural areas, what they do is they'll take 50 acres and they'll say, all right, we're 1 acre minimums or 2 acre minimums. Now you just took 50 acres and you only have maybe 40 homes between infrastructure and everything else. You have 30, 40 homes. Whereas if you took those 50 acres and made it like condos, part of it, townhouses, another part, and then do another part with some single homes, you could put probably 3 or 4 times the amount of properties in there. That's the other thing too. We did things like that for a long time and everybody wanted their big chunk of land, but it really, and it's fine. It's the American way. We want you to have what you want to have. But on the other side, there's got to be some places where we do cluster housing, where we do, high density in a certain area. So that is a great one with making the lot size requirements smaller, which is great. I love that idea.
And, where you are there is there any need for ADUs? I mean, like to me, Pennsylvania, I don't live there, but Pennsylvania seems like a very long state that's full of forest. And on one end is Pittsburgh and on the other end is Philadelphia. Not much in between, but that's just
you're perception. Right. You're pretty much, you're spot on. The middle of Pennsylvania is very, very rural, a lot of woods, a lot of hunting, a lot of deer. Yeah, you basically have, and then there's these little cities in between. So like Harrisburg, which is the capital, bigger city, but not huge, but it's kind of like in the middle of the state, more towards the east than it is the west. You have Erie, which is not really big up there either, but you have, and our like Reading, Pennsylvania, we've got about 85,000 in our city, 400,000 in the county, which is Berks County. So yeah, you're right. It's basically a lot of population around the city of Philadelphia, a lot of population around the city of Pittsburgh, but in between, a lot of rural areas, a lot of unbuilt home, a lot of unbuilt land, pretty much.
So, what I'm saying is like density increases, are they happening in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh? Do both cities need it, or maybe just Philadelphia? ADUs, et cetera.
Yeah, I think what you find with Philly's, everything around Philly's built out. There's not much left, to build out. The biggest thing right now, what they're doing is in the city of Philadelphia and a lot of cities, they're repurposing buildings, taking old warehouses and turning them into, high-end luxury apartments. And that's really, it's good. That's useful, very useful, because you already have the property, you have the real estate there. So just repurposing it is really actually, and it's great because a lot of people want to be in that metro life, that metropolitan life they want, and that's cool. A lot of younger people love that. They'll rent forever in the city, or they'll buy a condo, in a building. So we got to do more of that. The problem with when you go, like right above us is called Schuylkill County. I shouldn't say problem, challenge. Schuylkill County is right above us and very, very wooded, very, very sparsely populated. Problem is there's no jobs there. So you almost have to you got to bring in the jobs. It's a catch-22. You got to bring in the jobs to bring in the people, to bring in the developers, I should say, and builders to want to build there. But if there's no jobs there, people don't want to live there, because you don't want to be 45 minutes from your job or an hour from your job.
Yeah.
So that's a big, that's one of the things about some of these rural counties is there's nothing there. When you don't have anything there, like coal mining, our coal mining area, which was Schuylkill County. Since the coal industry is pretty much, extinct, that took a lot of people away from those areas. And they had vacant houses and vacant towns up there because that was the industry. That was what fed the people. And now it's gone. So that's, they got to figure out what they're going to do in those kind of areas. And it takes time.
A different question occurred to me. I think this is probably one on a lot of people's minds. So there's people that are interested in real estate, that are in real estate, and the news they hear is all about a market. But as we know, there's no such thing as a market. It's totally local. What does someone do, though, with information about the real estate market? How do they reconcile that with their local area? Like, what additional investigation should they do to figure out, is what's being told nationally representative where I live? If I want to buy a house, sell a house, rent a house, et cetera, How do I bridge that gap between those two types?
I would find, of course I'm going to say this because I'm in real estate. I would find a realtor that you trust, that is experienced, and maybe that you got a referral from, maybe friends or, do some digging. People think that you just pick one realtor and that's it. Interview some realtors, find out who you click with, find out who knows the local market. If you have a good realtor, they should be able to tell you what's going on in the market. They should really know their local market. I mean, I study this stuff nationally, state, and I study it locally too. I read a lot and I really, really pay attention, which I didn't always do. But when you have a podcast that, is kind of 25 to 40% real estate, I better know what I'm talking about. So, I'd say that
in your experience, if someone's not a real estate nerd and they don't love it, but they want to participate in it somehow, what are some of the best ways for them to start researching where they live? And, in addition to a realtor, they even find a good realtor. How do they know what to ask?
Go online. I would say go online, and you can go on even I don't like a lot of the public sites because they're not really, I don't think they're really as accurate as they should be. But if you go online, even just to your county's website or your town website, there should be stats in there. And if you actually just look up real estate market for whatever your area, you'd be surprised the graphs, the charts, the things that will come up from different services that are online. And then from there, even look up, best realtor. If you look up best realtor in the county or best realtor in the city, you'll find some people that way too. I also think a reference, if you know somebody that just bought a house or sold a house or something like that, find out from them. Did they like their realtor? Or was it somebody that they trusted? You can also go on your local, we have PAR, which is Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. Texas has the same thing. Then you usually have your local association, like we have Reading Berks Association of Realtors. Go on there. They have public sites that you can go on. You can get information about real estate. There's a lot of stuff you can find out that way.
I've seen some of the bigger channels, like Bigger Pockets, and there's some big real estate channels now on YouTube that put out all kinds of info.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying good or bad or ugly, but
out
there.
Yeah, so. Exactly. But you're right though. Really, really dig into what's going on in your local market, because what you hear on the news or what you hear in the state is the real estate is so local. It really is. So even within our county, each school district has its own market. And that's the part that you really start to get, when you start really fine tuning, each school district has a different market, has a different pricing, has different taxes, So you really just have to, you got to figure out where you want to go. And a lot of times if you have children, you want to study the schools and things like that. That's going to determine what school market you're going to be in and then go from there. But just find somebody that really knows their stuff. That's a realtor. And if you find the right realtor, I'm telling you, they have a wealth of knowledge and experience. If it's somebody just started, not that I'm going to bust on anybody just started, and they might be great, but somebody maybe has a couple of years under their belt that knows them, that has really studied things. So that's what I would do if it was me.
And is it important that your realtor owns at least a property or two themselves? Obviously a place to live, but how important is it that your realtor also invests?
And then I think, obviously it's like a dentist not brushing their teeth. I think, yeah.
Well, this probably happens a lot. When they say the cobbler's son has no shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, did you ever see a builder's house? Builder's house usually is never finished. It's kind of
I've heard about that. Yeah.
And I know that for a fact because I know a couple builders. they always have projects, and they're never finished. But I think, I never want to down on somebody young. When I first started in real estate, I was still living in my parents' house. Okay. And did I work hard? Hell yes. Because I wanted to, move on and get out of my own. So there's two ways to look at it. If I don't have my own house and I'm living with my parents at the time, and I'm going to work real hard for you as my customer so that I can get the heck out and get my own house. But you want to make sure if somebody's in their 40s and they're still living in rent and they're in real estate, that would be a little different. There could be reasons. There's times in our lives where, divorces, things change where you got to live in rent for a little bit. So it just depends on the person. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but they got to believe in the idea of owning real estate as being a great investment for the rest of for your future. There's so many studies that say if you own real estate, people that own real estate are like 40%, 50% wealthier at the end of their life than somebody that didn't, or that somebody that never believed in buying a house or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And just for fun, I don't know, what's like the, probably many, many years ago, but what's the cheapest house you've ever bought?
The cheapest house I ever bought was my first house. And here's what's funny about my first house. The first house I bought was 25 or 26 years old. And it was in a place called Lincoln Park. It was $89,900 for a single home. 1,500 square feet, right? And at the time where I bought this house, nice little community, really nice community. I ended up selling it 3 years later because I built a house, or 4 years later because I built a house for $139,900. I thought I was just I was on top of the world. I'm like, geez, I just made all this money, back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So what's amazing now, that same house just sold for $325.
Yeah, believe it.
So you want to talk about investment. Imagine if I would have stayed there for the last 20 years, it'd be paid off. Obviously I wouldn't be able to fit kids or anybody in the house because it was too small. But, it just shows you right there that's what we talk about. It's forced savings. It's forced savings with appreciation, and also you can loan against it to do other things. That's what people always forget too. Let's just say now you own your house and you want to start buying investments. Get a home equity loan, take $30,000 out and go buy investments of that $30,000, And now that $30,000 is making you a hell of a lot more than it is by just sitting in, now you got another write-off, you got tax advantages. There's so many things that can come about with the money that's in your house. So,
That's very good.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, so you mentioned you have a podcast. So where can people find out more about you and hear your thoughts? What's the name of your podcast?
The name of the podcast is The Brad Weisman Show. You can find me on any podcast venue, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. I have my own YouTube page, which is youtube.com/@The Brad Weisman Show. You can just look up thebradwisemanshow.com. You can go on Facebook and look up The Brad Weisman Show, anywhere. If you just type in The Brad Weisman Show, you will find me.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the podcast, Brad. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I wish you the best.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.